he never believed in love anymore. Not after what it had done to him, how it had turned his heart into a locked vault no one could open again. But that night, sitting across from a woman whose laughter felt like sunlight breaking through a lifetime of storm clouds, he realized, maybe some people walk into your life just when you've stopped looking and refuse to let you give up. It began with a promise he made to himself, 5 minutes. That's all he'd give this blind date his well-meaning sister had set up. 5 minutes, a polite smile, maybe a coffee, and then an excuse to leave. After all, Ethan Cole was not the kind of man who had time for meaningless small talk and awkward dinner conversations. He was the CEO of a global tech company, a man whose world revolved around meetings, numbers, and silence. But fate, that mischievous architect of life, had other plans. Ethan arrived early at the small Italian restaurant his sister had insisted on. It was quiet, candlelit, tucked between a florist and a bookstore downtown, a place that smelled faintly of fresh bread and nostalgia. He sat at the corner table, scrolling through his emails, waiting for the 5 minutes to start. He didn't even know the woman's name. Just meet her, his sister had begged. If you don't smile once, I'll never ask again. Then she walked in. Her name was Lila Bennett, 28, wearing a soft cream sweater and jeans, her hair loosely tied in a messy bun, with strands falling against her flushed cheeks from the cold outside. There was nothing glamorous about her. No expensive perfume. No designer handbag. Just warmth. Real, unpolished warmth. She looked around nervously until her eyes met his. And when she smiled, something strange stirred inside him. "Ethan," she asked softly, almost uncertainly. He stood up politely, nodded, and gestured for her to sit. "Yes. You must be Lila." She fumbled with her purse, almost dropping it, and laughed, a nervous, melodic laugh that echoed across the quiet restaurant. And just like that, something shifted. It wasn't her beauty that caught him. It was that laugh. Unfiltered. Honest. The kind of sound that doesn't ask permission to exist, it just does. "So," she began once they ordered, "I should warn you, I'm terrible at blind dates. The last time, I spilled wine all over the guy's suit." Ethan smirked slightly. "Let's hope we survive this one without casualties." Minutes passed. Then 20. Then an hour. And somehow, the man who came planning to leave after 5 minutes found himself listening to her stories, to her dreams, to the way she talked about her students at the community center where she taught art to underprivileged kids. There was something disarmingly pure about the way she spoke of others. Not once did she talk about herself. "Why do you do it?" Ethan asked quietly. "Teaching for almost nothing." She shrugged, eyes glowing softly. "Because someone once told me that even broken crayons can still color. I like helping others remember that." That line stayed with him. Like an echo. Like a truth he didn't know he needed. Ethan had been broken too. His fiancée had left him years ago, on the day he proposed. She'd told him he'd never know how to love someone because his heart belonged to his ambition. Since then, he'd buried himself in work, built an empire, and built walls so high that no one dared climb them. But now, this woman, with her clumsy hands and laughing eyes, she wasn't climbing his walls. She was quietly walking through them as if they weren't even there. Later that night, when the waiter brought dessert, Lila grinned. "You know, you smile when you're not thinking about smiling." He chuckled, almost shyly. "I'll take your word for it." As the evening wound down, the rain started outside. Ethan offered to walk her to her car. They stood under his umbrella, the city lights shimmering on the wet pavement. She looked up at him. "Did you have fun, Mr. CEO?" He looked down at her, really seeing her for the first time. "More than I expected to." She smiled. "Good. Because I almost didn't come. I thought you'd be boring." He laughed, genuinely, and for the first time in years, it didn't sound foreign. He didn't realize it then, but that night would become the turning point of his life. Days turned into weeks. Ethan and Lila started meeting again, first for coffee, then dinner, then long walks by the river. She told him about her dream to open a small art studio for kids who couldn't afford lessons. He listened, fascinated by her passion, by how her entire world revolved around giving rather than taking. But then came the moment he feared most, the truth. Lila found out who he really was. Not just Ethan, the quiet man who laughed at her jokes and remembered her favorite coffee. But Ethan Cole, the billionaire CEO of C-Tech Industries. The man whose company had been accused in the media of exploiting small communities for land development. She felt betrayed. "You never told me who you were." He tried to explain, his voice breaking. "I wanted you to know me, not the name, not the money." She turned away. "But I don't know you at all anymore." For weeks, she stopped answering his calls. Ethan went back to his office, to his quiet penthouse, to his hollow routines. Everything felt empty again. But this time, the emptiness hurt. Because now he knew what it was like to feel full and lose it. Then one morning, as he stared at his reflection in the mirror, he realized something. If he truly loved her, he had to prove it, not with wealth, not with power, but with change. He visited the same community center where she taught and anonymously funded the art studio she'd dreamed of. No press release. No cameras. Just a quiet gift. When Lila found out, she went there in disbelief. The studio was real. The children had brushes, canvases, and laughter filled the hallways again. And there, standing quietly by the doorway, was Ethan. "I didn't do this to win you back," he said softly. "I did it because you were right. Even broken crayons can still color. I wanted to remember that too." Tears filled her eyes as she looked at him, not the CEO, but the man behind the title. "Why did you stay that night?" she whispered. "You said you'd only give 5 minutes." He smiled, his eyes soft. "Because your laughter didn't let me leave." She stepped closer, her voice trembling. "And now?"